late than never. Reaching out to everyone out there, telling you, hope you are well. My morning, my day has been absolutely wild, and hope you are well and everything going on in your world. I know we've seen a lot of changes, a lot of people at home, a lot of shifts, which obviously creates some craziness, like I've experienced today. Internet went out and some other wildness. So I appreciate for all of those that are actually tuning in and listening. Thanks so much for being loyal, sticking around, and let's get this kicked off. So today we are talking about context, and I want you to think about context. There's a popular TV show on Netflix. Actually, it was one of the most popular TV shows, the fastest ever watched in the world, which was Squid Game. Now, if you watch the Squid Games, um, more power to you. I did watch it. I thought it was pretty wild, pretty crazy theme, pretty insane storyline. But what I think would be even crazier is if you were to bring someone to watch the TV show 4 episodes in. Think about the fact that if they had never heard about it, if they then show up in episode 4, the thing that they're missing most is context. Now, for some shows out there that we have watched before, man, you can figure out context so quickly. It doesn't almost matter where you're at. You can just pick it up. It's not an issue. But as a salesperson selling a complex technology product, or as a salesperson or marketing individual that's selling a product that has a lot more complexities to it, which most of us are, and most of our products are very complex, then they need context. Our audience needs context. So if you think about how do we offer context, because if you don't offer context, then your audience is going to be lost. They're it's not going to be easy. They have to go into second level thinking, critical level thinking skills to try to understand and solve what you're saying in their brain. And quite frankly, as we all know, if anyone has to get to that degree, they have to get to a place where they're having to critically think about something. If it's not important, if it doesn't help them reach or accomplish their priorities for the day, they're moving on. So it needs to be simple and easy for them to understand, which means they need context. So let's talk about really 3 major ways that you offer context to your audience. This doesn't matter if you are in sales or we're talking about prospects, whether you are a leader and you're talking about your internal people, or you're in a role of maybe business development and we're talking about our current customers or strategic partners. All of it still remains the same. So, number one way that you offer context is by having a brand, whether that be a personal brand or whether that be your organization's brand, but there must be content. Content. There must be enough content out there that offers context. If you ask most people that are in my circle, hey, tell me about Chris Watson, what does he do? Most people will say, oh, yeah, that guy is a storyteller. He does strategic storytelling. Why? Because that's my brand. That's the content I put out. That's what I talk about. That's what I talk about when I go on podcasts. That's what I write about when I'm writing my content and my LinkedIn content. And everywhere I go, I talk about storytelling, the power of strategic storytelling as a form of communication. So because of that, I put out enough content that people then have context for when we have a conversation, they already know who is this person, or they can quickly gather context if I was to have a discovery call or a prospecting call, a cold call that's out there with them. So they can then go gather context. Number 2 way, marketing. Our websites for our organizations and the white papers, the videos, whatever the marketing pieces are, we need marketing to provide enough content out there for us that someone can quickly and easily understand what we do and who we are. Now, this is where we typically see conflict. Typically where we see conflict I didn't even think about it. We've got context, content, and conflict. But when we see conflict, it is because the individual who's communicating doesn't actually trust the content that's being put out by marketing. They don't trust it. For some reason, they don't believe that what marketing is putting out is actually supporting the context they need for their buyer, for their partner, and we'll get to internal here in a moment. So when that marketing material comes out, whether it's a video, whether it's written content, whether it is a white paper or a case study, whatever it might be, if they don't believe, if I as an individual don't believe that that marketing is giving enough context so that when I make a phone call or I send an email or I record myself on a video and send it out, if it doesn't resonate because there is no context, I'm going to struggle. And this is why you see so many people out there saying you got to build a personal brand, you got to be committed to content, you got to make sure that there's a way for people to get context. The truth is that you don't have to build a personal brand, but marketing has to support you to a degree that the content that they're putting out can absolutely create context for a buyer. Recently, within the last 3 or 4 years, I read, I believe it was in Forbes, that a top executive that is making above $250,000 a year is now willing to make a purchase online for $50,000 or less with the click of the button. Going online, clicking a button, $50,000 or less, willing to make a purchase without talking to a salesperson at all. Now, why are they able to do that? They're able to do it because they're able to gather context through the content that's being put out in a digital way through marketing, through the website, and even potentially through salespeople that are putting content out there. So if that is the state that we're in, then we must understand that buyers are already going out and educating themselves. So if we can find that crossroad between education and now taking a meeting that shortens the sales process, that shortens the conversation, so that now I'm just answering conversations, that shortens the amount of time for context, then now we can have a lot more success. So first two things. One, you've got to be building some type of content that's out there. And number two, marketing needs to be supporting those efforts. Now, number three, I want to talk about internally. I want to talk about as a manager or a leader, how are we offering context to our team, to our people? And I think the most important thing is that we have to be willing to know what needs to be a meeting and what needs to be an email or a message, because that meeting and that email provides context for the next conversation. It creates the overall narrative for our relationship. So as you all know, because you've experienced it before in your life, there have been times where I was headed to a meeting and the text message that I received about the upcoming meeting threw me through a loop. I wasn't sure what we were going to be talking about. I wasn't sure what we were trying to accomplish because that message didn't create the right context for the meeting that we were about to have. Similarly, if my team is primarily remote and I'm sending emails or I'm sending messages, if I'm not providing the proper context, then now they've created a false narrative in their mind. And we don't want that. We want to make sure that they're creating the context, or they're receiving the context that's really important. And that as a leader, that we are making sure that we're giving out the narrative that we want. And there's got to be intentionality behind that. I think too often we lead, we communicate the way we want to be led and the way we want to be communicated with, instead of thinking about the people that we're leading. So we're thinking about the audience. How do they need to be led? What's the information that they need? How can I get that to them quickly so they understand the context, both of the relationship, of the narrative, of the objective, of the situation, of our goals, and then we can then build upon that context. Often, I find that in all of these situations, whether we're dealing with our people, our partners, our prospects, our current customers, whoever it might be, that we make an assumption that these audiences have context. We assume they already have context. So then when we enter into the conversation, because we are the expert on our own products, our services, our worlds, our organizations, the status of where we stand today, we enter in way past context. We enter in episode 4. And when we enter into the conversation on episode 4, that person is lost. So 2 things happen when somebody's lost. Either one, they want to make the person that's speaking to them believe, which might be in a team aspect internally. I know exactly. Oh, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand. I understand. And they walk away. I have no clue what we're talking about. I got to go look it up. Did I miss an email? Hey, Tom, did I miss an email? He was talking about, I never even heard of that. Yeah, me neither. I've never heard of that either. Now we're in a really, really tough situation. That how long will this continue to go? Well, I can tell you, it'll happen until something very critical comes up. We don't meet expectations, and then we have to come back and say, I didn't know what you meant when we had that meeting. I thought I did. I thought I could figure it out, and I don't. So that's internally. Externally, what do? If a prospect or a customer doesn't have context and doesn't understand where you are, and you're trying to enter into the conversation in episode 4, then they say, no thanks, not interested. I don't think this is right for us. What they're really saying is, I don't understand what you're talking about. But they're never going to say that. They're going to say, oh, yeah, we already have something. Or, yeah, we don't need that. Because what's their brain doing? Well, their brain is in a habit loop. So when they hear somebody pitching something to them, quickly are trying to decide, do I need this or not? Do I have this or not? Does this help me solve the problem that I have right now in my organization that I was working on today, this week, in this moment, or not? And if you don't make enough, if you don't give them enough context, if they don't understand who you are, then they're going to be lost. So how do we solve really for this problem? Well, we have to make sure that there's an intentionality, that our intentions are matching our execution. I intend to give context. I want to make sure I give context. I'm going to reach out through email. I'm going to reach out through messaging. I'm going to reach out in a video, as well as then when I follow up, I'm going to make sure intentionally that you understand and communicate clearly. Remember, context is king. And if we don't have content and our marketing team isn't supporting us and we're not thoughtfully thinking about how we're communicating internally, then we will fail in the most critical moments of your business. Typically, that's going to be gathering new business, which impacts revenue, or closing business, which impacts revenue, because we're not going to meet our goals and we don't clearly understand why we started this, what we're trying to accomplish, who's involved, and ultimately, how do I fit into that? Quit talking to your people starting in episode 4 and make sure that you give them time, you give them context, you give them your intentions so that then you can run really, really fast. Thanks so much for tuning in to Compel Your Audience. I look forward to seeing you guys next Thursday. Remember, we're always here Tuesday, Thursday, 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern. I guess that's 10:30 a.m. Pacific. Love for you guys to jump in, and shortly, very shortly, you will see me again on Thursday with a guest. Talk to you guys soon. Later.